Hey scrappers, it's Tom from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, which means it's our time for our weekly report on YouTube and on Facebook. What are we going to talk about today? Market news, market updates, what you should expect at your scrapyard, and how you can make more money with your scrap. Follow me, let's go talk scrap. Have questions about scrap? Time to ask them now. Let's go.
iScrappers, Tom from the iScrap app. Today, iScrappers, Tom from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, April 28th, 2021, and we are so excited to have you with us in an episode that is going to hopefully be one of many in a row that talks about super high copper prices. But before we get into those things, don't forget there are so many different things that we want to talk to you about, but send us your questions so we can start answering them. So while we're doing these live feeds, we're actively monitoring the questions. We'll try to get you our answers as quickly as possible during these live broadcasts, but if we don't get them to you, do not worry. We'll make sure to get those answers posted during the week, and we'll address them the week after. Now, don't forget, for all of you catalytic converter recyclers out there, rrcats.com is quoting, paying really quickly for catalytic converters. So within 1 to 2 business hours, you can get quotes for your catalytic converters just by going to rrcats.com. Now, here we are in the midst of a major re-energization. I wish this was recorded, right? The markets are restabilizing, reinvigorizing themselves, and we are seeing copper prices climbing to records that we haven't seen in over 10 years. We saw the copper prices hit $4.50 per pound trading wise, which goes along with what we talked about a few months ago. Copper will be hitting $5 per pound, and our prediction was that it was going to be hitting $5 per pound in 2021. Now, if we can have a run-up of copper prices of 30 cents over a 4-day period, which is what we just saw, there is no reason to think otherwise of seeing $5 per pound copper just around the corner. Now, do we think that this is going to happen immediately? At this point, it could. Some of the things that we have not seen before are large price increases immediately followed by stable prices, which is what has been happening over the last few months. Now, not only have we seen these copper prices trading at $4.50, that's an important number, but a number that we like even more, people are reporting $4 per pound for stripped copper wire for the first time ever. I know here in New Jersey at Rockaway Recycling, we're paying $4 per pound for the first time in our company's history for stripped copper wire, and we expect those prices to increase in the coming weeks and months. Now, we're watching all these things, and one of the things that I've been wondering over the last few years was, what's going to happen with these commodity markets? What is going to be the trigger? What is going to be the catalyst to really buoy these prices into a different realm, to take them from those numbers that we saw in those 2004 to 2008 ranges, only to be mimicked again in 2010 to 2011? We are seeing the markets moving fast, strong, increased demand, and one of the biggest things we're looking for now is to talk about infrastructure, to talk about the electric vehicles, because it seems like this is going to be the way that the copper demand is really going to uptick in the coming months and years. But we have a question that we want to immediately answer.
Travis asked, you discussed batteries and the future of EVs impacting prices.
Yeah.
What other environmental or sustainable initiatives might impact the scrap market?
So Travis, that's an awesome question. When we look at all the different environmental things that are going on right now, one thing we want to look at is not just that clean energy sector, but also where the metals are going country-wise throughout the entire world. Now, there are different countries that have much different emission standards, and some of the countries that are buying some scrap in the Middle East, whether it's India or Turkey, some of them do not have as high expectations and levels set for their environmental needs. So one thing that we're looking for is more scrap recyclers keeping material domestic inside of the country, but we know that this will not always happen. So one of the things that we're hoping to see happen, and I just finished attending a ISRI trade show meeting that just talked about where the industry is going, how we can further promote the green, reduce, reuse, recycle movement, and how we can help curb things going into places that they shouldn't be. A couple of examples that I'd like to talk about: plastics, glass, and cardboard. While these are not common scrap metal items, of course, they are items that we all see every single day while we're working with other types of debris. Separating these and going over them is really important. And I was just talking to Missy yesterday, talking about some of the strippings from copper wire, those plastic, the rubber coming off of the stripped copper wire. What happens to those things? Where are those plastics industries, and how are they going to inject themselves into the scrap metal world so the debris that is generated through scrap can get recycled correctly? Now, we've been talking to people like TerraCycle. We've been looking at members of the ISRI community, which is a multi-thousand company network of recycling across the entire country and the world. And we've been trying to figure out where these markets are going to be going and how we're going to efficiently be able to recycle a lot of these different materials. Now, the electric vehicle market with the different batteries that are coming out is so incredibly interesting to look at. But one of the biggest concerns, how are those batteries going to be recycled? Now, while there have been numerous battery manufacturers and recycling operations populating and jumping all over the country being created, one of the things that we found in common is they have very, very expensive ways of recycling these batteries. So until companies, we'll take Tesla, for instance, or some of the other ones like GM that are producing these electric vehicles, until they take a super initiative to help recycle some of the batteries, it's going to be a little more of a longer and very expensive road to figure out where these batteries are going to get recycled and when. But we really appreciate the question, and we hopefully that answered where you were going. Now, there are so many different directions that we could go in today, so let's keep on that copper trend. Well, we've seen those copper prices going over and stabilizing $4 per pound on the trading level. We've seen the reported prices really picking themselves up as well. Now, we've talked about this at iScrap. We have a new version of the iScrap app coming out in the coming months that's going to really highlight reported prices. So you'll be able to take the prices and scan them easily into the iScrap app to help you learn more about the markets, learn where the markets are going, and help you, of course, make more money by learning about price averages. We have another question that we'd like to answer right now.
We actually have a few reported prices on copper around the country we want to share. First, we're getting $4.04 for Bear Bright in Kentucky.
Big number.
We are getting $4.15 Bear Bright in Houston,
$4.15 in Houston.
And $3.50, I don't know where, but $3.50.
$3.50, okay.
And then $3.50 for number 2 tubing.
Some really great numbers. Almost makes my eyes pop out of my head. I was looking and talking to some of the staff that we have, some of the team members here at Rockaway Recycling earlier today, and we were just talking about double checking your work in such a really critical way. Here we are having 100 pounds of stripped copper wire being worth $400. Now compare that to a year ago when the markets were around $220 to $210. $200 gain almost doubling the markets, which they really have. If you look at where the copper prices bottomed out in March of 2020, around $215 to $225 per pound, we have doubled those prices. Why have the prices doubled? Well, inject $6 trillion into the world, throw a pandemic into the mix, and then have the explosion of manufacturing afterwards, from the work from home trend, the electronic trend, the electric vehicle trend, a changing in government from the election. You throw all these things into the mix, and they really are going to show you how crazy it's been over the last 15, 16 months outside of the pandemic, because we don't want to talk about things that have been beaten to death right now with so many people talking about them. We want to talk about copper and where it's going to be moving forward, which is in a positive way. Now, when you go to sell material to your scrap yards over the next few weeks, months, and years, there are multiple things that you're going to want to keep in mind. scrap laws. Now here at iScrap, we have a page dedicated to the scrap metal laws. So when you go to sell your scrap inside of whatever state that it may be, you'll always be able to go to the iScrapApp.com, find your local state pages, and we're always combing the web to see about updates and increases and decreases in different local and state regulations, and we update those online as well. Now, by learning about those scrap metal laws for your state, it's going to give you a better idea and a better understanding on where they could go, tax implications, which no one ever wants to talk about, but it is a reality where the government at one point have talked about being able to access scrap dealers' records. Now, we are years and years away from that happening because that's not our job. Our job is to be able to take licenses, record transactions, but with these higher prices, you better bet dollars to scrap donuts that you are going to see problems arising, whether it's from catalytic converter theft, scrap prices increasing, but overall these market movements are going all over the place. We have another question that we want to make sure we answer.
Jeffrey asks, is there a market for mercury?
Oh, wow. That's absolutely a question, Jeffrey, that I won't answer. Mercury is considered a very poisonous metal and one of the very few metals that's found in liquid form. Now, these liquid mercury thermometers that we saw for so many years in different ways that they were being used, while they were really useful in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, mercury has become so incredibly difficult to recycle that it is one thing that I have never and will never give advice on recycling other than directing you to your local state recycling center or your local town. They should be able to help you, and if they can't, you can always email us at info@iscrapapp.com, and hopefully we'll be able to give you a little more information. Let's keep those questions rolling.
Dwayne asks, just wondering what brass is trading for both red and yellow brass.
Great, Dwayne. Yellow brass prices that we've seen posted through the other scrappers online are as follows: $1.70, $1.85, $2.15, $2.05, and $1.97. National average for brass is in that $1.75 to $1.85 range for yellow brass, and we're normally seeing those red brass or bronze prices creep up around $2.15 to $2.55 per pound, numbers that almost seem too fake for me to say out loud, yet I know that they're real because I see my buying and selling numbers at the scrapyard every single day. Now, for those of you scrappers that have been saving material, just salivating and waiting for a day like this to come, should you cash it in or should you hold on? Well, we've said for years, cash in as you get it, but if you don't need the money, hey, save it for a rainy day. Well, here in New Jersey, it's very sunny today, but if I were you, I'd be cashing those materials in because a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And if you saw copper prices drop down sporadically 20, 30, 40 cents per pound, you'd be super upset if you were holding 1,000 pounds of copper that lost $400 in value just because you might have been being greedy, hoping that you could hit that $5 level. Now, we have another question we want to answer before we hop back in to those copper prices.
Do you think overseas shipping containers will affect non-ferrous pricing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The overseas crunch that we're seeing right now for the shipping market is almost too crazy to be seen. We've seen a market triple in price per container to over $10,000 per overseas shipping container getting moved. And now you're going to say, Tom, how does that affect the scrap prices? Well, if it costs $3,000 to move 45,000 pounds of copper, and now it costs $10,000, that additional $6,500, $7,000 that's getting tacked onto those shipping costs have to be built into the different copper prices. So it's simple math at this point. 7,000 divided by 44,000, what are you looking? 16 to 17% increase in how much money those different shipping containers are going to cost to the scrappers, how much money they're going to have to pull off of their sales numbers. So 45,000 pounds, let's say it's being sold for $4 a pound, $180,000. You got to take 7,000 off of that. So it will affect different profit levels. So the overseas shipping crunch that we're seeing right now is not only real for metals, but for all goods right now. You see computers, phones, TVs, cars. You've seen a supply chain disruption due to COVID that is going to be forced on us, from the semiconductor industry to the lack of cardboard that's getting recycled and reused throughout the entire world right now. On top of that, you have countries like India that are getting pummeled by COVID, which is going to drastically decrease their output, their functionability, and a lot of the shipments going in and out of the country, which of course is going to have a domino effect on the world scrap market, as they have been one of the larger buyers in recent years outside of the Chinese. Now, here we are looking at these prices, and let's just keep talking about good news. Aluminum markets hitting $2,400 a ton on the LME. Now, we briefly talked about the LME, which is the London Metal Exchange, and based out overseas in England, the London Metal Exchange has been used to track inventories of all different types of metals that are available throughout the country and throughout the world. Now, the LME is known as the commodity trading hub, and that's where a lot of the copper, aluminum, and nickel prices are set through different traded routes. Of course, there's the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and other commodities trading platforms that will heavily affect these markets. But the aluminum prices have risen to over $2,400 per ton, which means we're looking around $1.15 for raw, virgin, pure aluminum right now. Now, of course, your sheet aluminums, your cast, your rims, they're not going to be pure virgin material, but one day they will be again. And all these different grades have such increased values right now. We've seen aluminum rims, for instance, being priced and reported between 55 and 82 cents per pound, depending on volume and type of rim. So these prices that are getting reported from you, the scrapper, for free through the iScrap app are helping people learn about the markets and learn about where the aluminum and other markets are going to be moving. Now, we have an upcoming blog and video that we've talked about with extruded aluminum that's going to really help answer a lot of questions about what is extruded aluminum, how do I sell extruded aluminum, what grade is extruded aluminum. But one thing we really like to highlight is talking to your scrap yards. You know, through the iScrap app, especially with our new 2.0 update, which I can tell you is completely awesome. When it comes out in the next couple of months, you're going to see it and say, wow, this is not only going to change the scrap industry for scrappers, but it's also going to drastically help you make more money with your scrap by tracking items that you've sold and seeing the prices that you've received for those items, when in reality, you take your receipt, crumple it up, throw it into the trash can, and you walk right out the door. But through iScrap 2.0, we're going to be giving people access into scrap prices like they've never seen before, creating charts, creating opportunities for you to report your prices, but more importantly, see other prices that have been reported in the area. Hey, have a catalytic converter? Get a price from rrcats.com. At that point, you'll be able to see those prices and really help know where the market levels are set. And ultimately, you're going to end up selling your cats to rrcats.com, because as one of the nation's largest catalytic converter buyers, it's going to give you a much better idea on how to make more money. Now, we're going to cut away so you can learn a little more about catalytic converter recycling, but we'll be back in just a minute.
At rrcats.com, we have everything that you need to sell your catalytic converters. We have an easy quoting system that you can send pictures or serial numbers to. We have the ability to get your cats graded within 1 business day. You'll get quick payment via PayPal or check. If you look at our Google reviews and our other online reviews, you will feel confident with the team at rrcats.com to be able to purchase your catalytic converter time and time again. We look forward to earning your business at rrcats.com today.
Now listen, you've just learned about rrcats.com, but let the team show you how to make more money with your catalytic converters by going to rrcats.com. Get a free quote, and almost every single quote right now is coming with, you guessed it, a free shipping label, so you can ship your cat out and get paid within 1 day of that cat arriving through the business days. Now let's talk about some other markets that we've seen, but first we want to talk about some electronic scrap questions that we've received.
with the global chip shortage, when will we see it reflect on our prices? Will e-scrap follow suit as well?
Yeah, so e-scrap is going to be a really tough thing because don't forget, the recycling community is only one part of the global chip shortage, the semiconductor chip shortage that we're seeing right now. Well, we can produce as much scrap as we need. One of the biggest underlying problems is not the scrap that's being produced or the metal that's being refined. You could have thousands of ounces of gold, platinum, palladium, rhodium, silver, copper by the pound getting ready to be put into those chips. But the problem is that supply chain, the overseas shipping routes, the labor problems, the COVID issues, the backlog in materials getting processed, and then once they are processed, how long does it take to get them shipped overseas? 2 years ago, I bought a computer. It got delivered to me within 3 business days. I ordered a computer 6 weeks ago that still has not been delivered. What has changed? Forget just COVID, right? Supply chain issues, some semiconductor shortages. These are things that can't be solved by more scrap being pumped into the system. If anything, one thing that we're seeing is there is so much scrap being pushed into the system right now, we could see a very large pullback similar to what we've seen in the steel market, which is what we're going to talk about next after we answer this next question.
Is it worth scrapping the gold out of computers?
I mean, it's worth scrapping anything out of computers if you have the right outlet. The gold itself, though, once you start pulling it off of the computer parts and you start trying to either refine it yourself or even sell it to local people, we've heard stories about people trying to sell gold to pawn shops. When you got to figure that gold is coated on top of copper or sometimes even aluminum, and those pawn shops have zero idea how to refine that, how to resell it. So the gold that's getting pulled out of these different things, it makes it really difficult. And even though we've seen the gold prices increasing close to $1,800 per ounce right now, that really doesn't solve the problem of supply chain. Now, we just briefly mentioned the steel prices getting pulled back, and here's one of the major reasons why. In December, January, and February, we saw a big push in the steel prices. Prices were jumping, the markets were moving in a very positive way. We saw the markets jump about $100 to $150 per ton for a variety of metals, only to swiftly pull themselves back, going to the second half of February and into March and now April. Now, we've seen a pullback overall of $50 to $70 per ton, and that's largely due to the really big influx of steel that we saw from many large manufacturers and scrap metal producers that were holding on to a lot of scrap. Now, domestically here in the country, I can't tell you how hard it is to get really good appointments at steel mills as they're all booked up for weeks at a time. Now, you need to have a really good broker, connection, or you just have to be a humongous scrapyard to be able to have access to some of these steel mills. Otherwise, you're going to be forced into selling to some of these larger scrapyards that have exporting options, might offer you $20 per ton less, but sometimes, again, to go to the phrase, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about and highlight is what you, the scrapper, want to hear. With our podcast, Scrap You Later, we have been talking about all different things related to the industry. In the coming days, we're going to be doing an interview with a scrapper. We're also going to start interviewing scrapyard owners, scrapyard traders in the coming months. If there's any topic that you want to hear about outside of the crazy stories that I'll tell, let us know so we can put you up for an interview or even get your ideas to help us build on. Recently, the team at rrcats.com and Rockaway Recycling, we were asked to be part of a science-related video through a company called The Verge. Through that video, we were able to help educate people about the precious metal called palladium, and it helps people know and learn about the catalytic converter industry in a different way from a scientific point of view. Now, we're going to post that video, but really we were honored to be part of it to help people learn about the metals market. And if there's any opportunities that you can see working with the iScrap app, whether it's as educationally teaching kids, going after different market updates, different metal highlights, we would love to hear those different stories. Now, don't forget copper, 10-year highs. Those prices are really strong, and scrapyards are going to get really aggressive. So at $4 per pound on Bear Bright across the country in many ways, like we've heard reported this afternoon, why not report your prices and share those with other people as well? Now, scrappers, every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we'd like to do our live update on Facebook and on YouTube, and we would love to hear your input, your thoughts, your ideas, your comments, your questions, your concerns, or really just how we can help you make more money with your scrap. Before we sign off, we have one more question, and then we'll go from there.
Do you think the converter market's going to pop?
I think the converter market's popping, and that's not me stuttering on accident. That's because the converter market has tripled essentially in the last few years. When I was talking to someone the other day, they were saying, hey, how can we learn more about the markets? Well, become a Patreon supporter through the iScrap app. By being a Patreon supporter, you're going to be able to learn about different commodity focuses that we don't normally share just to the scrapping world. With different levels of money that you can contribute, you can learn about market tips. You can get our Friday weekly report and update that condenses the entire metals market and helps you learn about things that are going to help you make more money with your scrap metal. Scrappers, this is Tom from the iScrap app. Today is Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. We love that you tuned in, whether it's live or you're watching a recorded one. Regardless, we thank you for your time. Looking to sell cats, go to rrcats.com. And if you're looking to learn more about scrap, hey, where better to look than iScrapApp.com or by becoming a Patreon supporter today. Like always, scrap often, scrap everywhere, and until next week, scrappers, I'll scrap you later.